Hi, this is Eric Beyer of Old Vine, Texas, a new winery tasting room featuring 100% Texas wines from wineries all over the state. We are located in Mansfield, Texas, inside of Ancora Event Center on Broad Street. We have weekly tastings, charcuterie board to enjoy, live music, and a new wine club. Go visit our website at oldvinetexas.com to sign up for our newsletter and learn more. Or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Old Vine, Texas. We'll see you soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Are you ready to pop your cork? In the left corner at 6'4", 242 pounds, with a record of 45-0, the undisputed.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Will.
Hey, how many bottles of wine have you had?
Well, Will, it's not the wine. I'm just so excited about the podcast.
Yeah, I am too. But this is not a boxing match. This is We Know Texas Vino. Welcome, everybody, back to We Know Texas Vino. I am your host, Will, and today we're coming to you from Eden Hill with our guests, Bill Burns and Chris Hornbaker, the winemaker of Eden Hill. Welcome, folks. How y'all doing today?
Great to meet you guys.
Very good.
Well, so just so y'all know, this is my first video episode for the year. This is also kicking off my season 3 of We Know Texas Vino. So I'm hoping I don't fail on getting all the lower thirds show up on the screen here.
So I can scooch down. It's cool.
So this is going to be kind of fun to kind of figure all this out as we're going. This is going to be fun because then, of course, I get to edit this when I get home. So, guys, it's great to have you all on the show. Real quick, let me go through a couple of quick announcements, and then we'll get the show going. As we all know, that we are kicking off our season 3 party at 555 Vineyards in Valley View on January the 25th, along with Texas Wine Lovers. So we're literally going to take over the winery, and we're just going to have a massive party, I guess you want to call it. So it's a free event. Y'all come out. Y'all can support 555. Come support Texas wineries. And hopefully maybe we'll have some surprise guests that come and crash the party. I mean, you know, feel free to crash that, hint, hint. And then also come and talk about Texas wines with us. And then also this episode right now that I'm recording is our very first video podcast. So just like anything else that we've done with our podcast is we just did it on the fly and adjusted as we went. So if y'all remember when we did episode 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all of that, how bad the audio was, it was pretty horrible. Y'all can definitely chime in. You don't have to just sit there.
Okay. Do you know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
Like, I'm going to show my age now. So growing up, I used to watch that TV show WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yes, yes.
With like Les Nessman and Dr. Fever.
Yes.
That's like
Great
talking
show.
into a microphone. That's what this always reminds me of.
Well, you know, one of these days, I'm hoping I'm going to do wireless so I don't have to have all these wires on this table, you know?
Right.
But you know, I've heard some positives and negatives about it. So we'll see what happens.
As long as we don't throw turkeys out of a helicopter.
That's right.
I'm good for that.
As God is my witness, I thought they could fly.
That's a very WKRP in Cincinnati inside joke. If you guys haven't seen the show,
we're not going to do that.
go to YouTube or I guess Amazon Prime.
Hey, we can
find
throw-
it.
we can throw
Find
some-
the turkey out of the helicopter episode.
I'm going to have to actually put that in this video. You know that, right?
Yes.
Yes,
You know, we can throw some grapevines out of the window, out of the helicopter if you want to do that.
true. Just not kind of the same effect though as a turkey learning to fly.
Well, I mean, it's true, but I mean, at least it'd be a softer landing. Oh man. So with our videos here that we're doing, you can find us on YouTube at We Know Texas Vino. And then of course you can find us on any podcasting platform. And of course find us on Facebook at We Know Texas Vino. And then of course, you know, I love our website, weknowtexasvino.wine. By the way, the .wine domain name is very expensive.
It's more expensive than .com or something.
Yes, it's like I didn't realize how much it was. I got it for a deal for 2 years, so I was like, okay, I'll buy it. And then the renewal, and I was like, oh my god.
Well, I had no idea.
Oh yeah, the renewal on it's insane. Well, being an IT person, you know, when you have a regular .com, .net, .org name,
Sure.
you don't have to do any conversions on that. Well, when you do a luxury domain name, .wine, you have to do a conversion on that, and so there's a little bit more work to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it is what it is. So now, before we get too deep into this, do you want to go ahead and open a bottle of wine?
I sure can.
While Chris explains. Chris, it's been
Let's definitely open some wine.
Yes.
It's been 2 years since July of 2023 since I've been here. Episode 21.
Yes, so much has changed.
So much has changed. So kind of tell our listeners and our viewers now what has changed for Eden Hill since we were here.
So since 21, Eden Hill has come up with all kinds of new blends that we've got in our tasting rooms. We've been putting them into competitions. We've also been working with new vineyards, especially out in the Texas High Plains.
Okay.
And 3 of the wines we've got right now are 3 of our top award-winning wines. And so Bill is opening up our Albarino right now. This Albarino is from John Oswald's vineyard out in Brownfield. And just this year, this Albarino was picked as one of the top 12 top wines of Texas by Texas Monthly Magazine. And it was featured at the Texas State Fair.
Oh.
And the story behind this wine is kind of funny because for many years, Mom and Dad and I, my dad Clark and my mom Linda, who are partners and owners with me in the winery, we loved Albarino. And we thought that Albarino could be one of the top white grapes of Texas. And so we had talked to our grape grower, John Oswald, for many years about planting it. And he was unsure, it didn't have a lot of history in Texas, but the Albarinos that we tried from Texas were fantastic. Big lemon citrus aroma, really crisp, very clean wines. And eventually, John said, you know what? I think let's give it a try. Let's plant it. And now he's got many more acres of Albarino than even the acres he planted for us because it's become such a popular wine in Texas. In fact, we now sell this by the glass at several restaurants like Harvest at the Masonic, a new restaurant in downtown McKinney. It's a beautiful restaurant. It's like this 3-story restaurant with a live music bar on the top. Oh. And as well as some other restaurants around Texas.
Awesome.
And it's doing very, very well. And we think that Albarino is going to become, I think, one of the top white wines of Texas.
I agree with that.
Before we get too deep in this, let's toast this.
Cheers.
Cheers. Very clean. I love that citrus aroma on the wine.
It's a nice wine of authenticity to what Albarino should be, which is really cool to see that out of Texas fruit. You get that grassiness, you get that little like dry hay note and that bright citrus. And it's a wine of great by the glass, but it's also really good with food.
I'm going to tell you this, and you're going to laugh at me when I say this. You know what it reminds me of when I smell it? Back in the day when I used to work on a ranch, I remember mowing down the alfalfa hay and that smell of alfalfa. In the summer.
Like fresh cut grass, fresh cut alfalfa.
There's a difference between fresh cut grass and fresh cut alfalfa. I mean, it's just a totally different smell. And it reminded me, when I took a big smell of that, it just reminded me of that. Yeah, I mean, that's immediately the first thing I thought of when I smelled it. I mean, it's just, I love that smell.
Well, Dad will get a kick out of that because, Dad was a farm boy. He was raised in Kansas. So he's very familiar with the smell of cut alfalfa, wheat, things like that. So
that is absolutely phenomenal.
I truly believe that this is going to become a real standout wine in Texas, and I would love to see more Texas wineries work with Albarino. You can do so many different styles with it. Ours is very clean. It's done in a stainless steel style, so it's fermented stainless steel. It doesn't see any oak. I just want to keep that bright citrus fruit very prominent in the wine. But with Albarino, you can do oak-aged Albarino. You could do a partial mallow if you want. I left all the malic acid in this one. I blocked the malolactic fermentation. But you can do a partial mallow. You can get softer notes, like I said, if you want to age it in oak. It's an extremely versatile white wine. And one of the best parts about growing it in Texas is we have gotten it every year.
Right.
No matter the weather, no matter what Mother Nature throws at you, the Albarino comes in with good chemistry every single year that we work with it. So a great wine, and it's possible to be very consistent as a wine. I think those two things make it a standout for Texas going forward.
One of the things is I actually love about this one, and it cracks me up. So if you don't swirl it and you just smell it, I get that hay, alfalfa cut hay. Okay, then you swirl it, and then you smell it. I get that citrus.
The fruit takes over.
The fruit takes over.
Oh, I said citric. Sorry, it's citric.
Right.
I mess with citrics also. Okay. So, but I get that citric smell. Citrix. I'm just going to stop talking today. But I get that whole citrus smell.
As this video goes on, or it's going to be harder and harder to pronounce things, I'm sure. But
it probably is. But I get that whole lemon top smell out of it. I get that good smell out of it. But again, if you just don't swirl it, you just smell it. I get that cut, fresh alfalfa hay, and then of course the taste on it. It's just absolutely crisp. It's a great finish on it. Not very heavy and acidic. Because sometimes I'll drink some Albarinos and it hits you right here in the back of the throat a little bit.
Right. Sometimes, they could be a bit too tart.
Yes.
In the back. So this is one of the beauties about Texas Albarino is that the acid's going to be just a hair lower than in its native Spain.
Right. You did a good job on this.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Just makes me want to have like swordfish with like a cilantro lime salsa. By the way, you can actually get that recipe on New York Times.
Is that a good pitch there?
Yes, that's good. I think we can get New York Times promo there to help out on the,
we could definitely do
that. Show. Well, but any fish with like a cream sauce or maybe even just like a grilled fish.
Well, this is a shrimp scampi wine, if ever one there was, and just a touch of cream.
Thanks. Now
and a touch of Zatarain's hot sauce in the garlic butter. Just a little spice makes this nice.
So when y'all making lunch?
Well, see, we've already helped you out twice, though. New York Times and Zatarain's. So we've got 2 brand promos in there already. Well, but no, that sounds great.
I've had it with it. It's really good.
So it's funny you say that. As earlier this week, I was going to take a cooking class on making lobster ravioli at Charlottetown.
Well, Bill and I will be right over to help you.
No doubt about that.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to take the class, but they sent me the email with the recipe of the packet with a blood orange salad on it. So I know how to make homemade pasta. That's no big deal. So I just got to figure out how to cook a lobster. I've never done it before. So I guess I'm gonna have to buy some bottles of Albarino and
I'm a big connoisseur of homemade pasta, so I'll have to be the judge of that.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll invite you over. I also make homemade gnocchi also. So
you make homemade gnocchi. That's one of my favorite things here.
And one of my favorite things to cook, because I can do it perfect every time. And I do it with a very acidic white wine. Or actually I do it with a Viognier also, is I do a chicken piccata with risotto.
Oh, okay.
With a 4-cheese risotto. It's, man.
Yeah. Okay, well, you know what, Viognier, you mentioned Viognier. Viognier is also another good white grape for Texas, but amazingly, it blends perfectly with Albarino.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, in the past, we've made a blend of Albarino and Viognier. It was very popular for us. As a matter of fact, one of our fellow winemakers up here in North Texas, Chris McIntosh from Edge of the Lake Vineyard, he also makes an Albarino Viognier blend. Oh, yes. It's a wonderful wine. Definitely head out to Edge of the Lake and check that out.
Just so happens I'll be there tomorrow.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Yeah.
I've been pushing Chris to do Albarino, and I think he's getting tired of hearing me. Well, Viognier, excuse me. I'm a big Viognier fan.
So I'm going to throw this at you. There's a specific winery named Landon who did a holiday white that actually surprised me with Viognier.
Okay.
But he did it with Pinot Grigio and Picpoul Blanc.
Oh, nice. Yeah. The lip stinger,
yes.
Picpoul Blanc.
And what the great thing about it was, what made it so good, because of the acidic in Pinot Grigio and Picpoul Blanc, and then adding that Viognier made it very floral. And then he added just a little bit of back sugar on it. Now, Bob, I love you, but I'm just going to say this. I love to hate that bottle of wine, but I love to hate it all at the same time, because I'm a sweet guy, but not a sweet guy. And so when you drink it, very good flavors. I mean, that floral was coming out very prominent and stuff, but that sweetness right here would hit. And I'm like, no bueno. I don't like that.
Okay. But you want more of a dry finish.
I would have loved a really good dry finish, but it was good. Don't get me wrong. It was amazing. And I had people drink it and they're like, I want to love to hate this, but I hate to love it at the same time. I mean, it was really that good, but it was that little bit of sugar that kind of offset that acidity that threw me off a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Picpoul, And Picpool also is a really up and coming grape here in Texas.
Yeah, we're going to give shout outs to Breaking Bud for growing a whole bunch out there.
Yes, right. And Krista Hartman.
Yes, Krista Hartman.
Just north of here. She has a whole Picpool vineyard. Her Picpool, she makes 100% Picpool.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Oh, and she just opened up too recently.
Yeah, she did.
So y'all need to go check out Red River Provisions also with K.K. Hartman.
Picpool was the first flight that I tasted at the Rodeo and Cork Wine Competition in November.
Really?
My first 10 wines was a flight of Picpools. A grape I'm indifferent about. Like I said, hate to love them, love to hate them kind of thing. But the thing that was really cool is they were all outstanding wines, and understanding them and knowing what they're about when you're blind tasting, well, you know what it is, but you're tasting 10 different wines from 10 different wineries.
Right.
They were really, really good. And I found out that you could kind of pick the Texas ones out of there. There were 6 Texas Picpools in there, and there was only 3 from France and 1 from somewhere else. So it was really cool to see that Texas Picpool was, not a large entry into the competition, but it was a good scoring category. Right. We had a lot of silvers and golds out of that category.
Interesting. Well, speaking of up and coming grapes, you know what Texas is really known for growing the most of in the world? One grape, one varietal.
I would say Tempranillo, most likely.
No.
I didn't know this until I read it the other day, honestly. Blanc de Bois.
Blanc de Bois. Okay.
Texas is the world's leading producer of Blanc de Bois.
Oh,
I did not know that.
Yeah. We used to grow Blanc de Bois here, but it did all right. It made an okay wine up here in North Texas. I would say it seems to do better in South Texas,
or East Texas. Yes.
Or East Texas, yes.
When you got a lot of humidity.
It needs a bit more humidity to really perform.
Yep. In fact, there's a lady over in Stephenville at Bar Ditch Winery. I love how we just name dropping all these people.
Right.
No, it's great. Yeah.
So
let's do it.
Bar Ditch Winery, she's growing Blanc de Bois out there, and she does it unfiltered. And when I
would like to try that.
When I saw it, I was like, I'm not sure if I want to do an unfiltered white. But let me tell you something. It was like when it was nice and chilled. I mean, I'm talking about like 45, 50 degrees. Okay. It tasted like it eaten a cold apricot, unfiltered.
Sounds delicious.
It was actually really good, and I was really shocked because I'm used to having a Picpool Blanc. A Blanc de Bois being a little bit more acidic, a little bit more clear. In fact, actually, my first time drinking Blanc de Bois, I thought it was actually water because they had filtered it so much that it was crystal clear like water. And that was crazy. And I'm like, holy crap, that's the best water in the world. I was fixing to find out what spring they got that one from. And they told me, oh, no, that's our Blanc de Bois. But man, that right now is one of the biggest grapes that Texas grows. We grow the world supply of Blanc de Bois right now.
I can believe that because Texas historically had some issues with Pierce's disease, and Blanc de Bois is Pierce disease tolerant.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's resistant, but I think it's tolerant.
I think it's tolerant. Yeah.
And it does take well to humidity as well. So if you're doing East Texas or South Texas, definitely would be a wonderful grape to grow.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Most definitely. So you got some good stuff going on here, but Chris, go ahead. You had something you was going to say.
Oh yeah, sorry. We stopped with the Albarino. We kind of went down that road.
Yes.
The Albarino road.
Hey, you know what? We get.
It's okay though. I'm okay to go down lots of roads today.
Smell it now. You'll see the depth of aromatics in this wine. I can sit here and do this and get as much enjoyment out of the wine just as like I'm drinking it. I love smelling wine and seeing how it changes in the glass over a period of time.
Do you know there was a lady over in Australia that before she became a winemaker, she was making perfumes. And she said the chemistry in making wine and perfumes is almost identical in many cases. And I was like, all right, so when are you going to make wine perfume? She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I want to be able to take my finger and dab it into my wine and just slap it on my neck.
Yes, right. Ode to Cabernet or something like that.
And she looked at me and she goes, that's not a bad idea. I was like, there's a lot of women that'll pay good money for that.
I think you're onto something. Well, with Albarino, another thing that makes it a wonderful wine for Texas is that when the summer hits in Texas and you're basically standing on the surface of the sun, it's 140 degrees.
That's in the shade.
And that's in the shade. Right? That's with like ice in your pockets and everything. It's still 140 degrees. You want something very crisp and light. And that's where Albarino really hits its stride.
Right.
So we see our sales of Albarino rise dramatically in that transition between spring and summer.
Mm-hmm.
And by the summer, we're almost sold out of it.
Wow.
It's just that it's a wine that cuts through the Texas heat in the summer.
Right. I mean, I love me a good Albarino. And while we're even talking about Albarino, you know who makes a great sparkling Albarino?
Who's that? Tell me.
Elisa Christopher.
She makes a sparkling Albarino.
She makes.
That's another thing you can do with Albarino is it does make a wonderful sparkling wine.
What is it called? Champagne Method.
Yeah,
Method Champenois.
Method Champenois. That's it. I knew where I was going on it. But real quick, if y'all would,
sure.
Hold that bottle up to the camera right here just a little bit.
Yeah, you bet.
So I want to make sure that people see this a little bit. And I just totally put it a $sign.
And your sister Wendy did that label, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Wendy, my sister, is a photographer. She's an art photographer, also a teacher down in Austin. And this is actually her photo on the label.
Nice.
I'm going to do like the Vanna White thing. Label on the camera.
One needs to put a dress on and a wig.
And shave.
And shave, right. Yeah. There's that part too.
Oh, man.
So, yeah, the Albarino label was photographed from my sister. She actually works on a lot of the labels with me here at Eden Hill. So,
nice.
Wendy, this is for you.
Yeah.
Thank you again for your great photograph on the Albarino label.
I'm not going to lie. I'm not sure why it keeps adding $signs to the...
Is it really adding $signs over the...
Well, so the first time I pulled the lower third across, it put $1 sign on it. And then it pulled it over a second time, it put $2 signs on it. I'm like...
Is this like AI? Is it already judging the wine from the video?
I guess so.
I think it's at least worth $3 signs myself.
That's right.
Let me put it back up and put $3 signs on it.
The one thing that we didn't mention about this is that's a gold medal winner at Lone Star International, and it also won Best in Class.
Oh.
And a short time after that, the wine was picked as a Texas Monthly Top 10 Texas wines, which they had Chris was down for it. They had a little like award ceremony down at the opening of the Texas State Fair, and it was a big event. So yes, that is a really good bottle of wine.
I commend you for that. That is a good bottle of wine.
Thank you. We're very proud of that wine.
Very good bottle.
Thank you to John Oswald for growing some great Texas Albarino grapes.
Yes.
Awesome. So what's the next bottle over there?
So we opened a bottle of the Good Texan. This is like a wine club member favorite. It's just a fan favorite here at the winery. A 75% Tempranillo, 21% Cabernet, 3% Cabernet Franc, and 1% Petit Verdot. This 1%, 2% Petit Verdot thing, you'll see in a lot of our wines. Said it's going to be on Chris's gravestone many, many years down the road. Here is Chris Hornbaker with a splash of Petit Verdot. So it's one of my favorite blending grapes. But this wine is really round on the palate because it's got a very smooth tannin profile to it. And it's a pretty fruit-driven wine that develops nicely as it's opened. It's one of the few wines that we have on our menu that I've tasted, and I dissect everything, that actually will throw a blue fruit note after it's open a while. You'll get this blueberry kind of note on the nose more than the palate, but it's there. But it's got to be coaxed out, and it's got to give it a little time, and it'll come out. Very layered wine.
So
the story behind this wine,
There's a good story here.
Because you were asking what's changed with Eden Hill over the last couple of years.
That was the story I'm going for, because the story on this is really great.
Mm-hmm.
We have so many customers over the years, and Eden Hill started in 2010. That's when we were bonded. Our vineyard, of course, was planted several years before that. We've had so many customers that come into the tasting room, and they'll say to us, I did not know that Texas wines could be good. Mm-hmm. And we still hear that today.
Yep.
And I was determined, after so many years of seeing our customers have that experience of being surprised that Texas wine could be good, that we would come up with a wine that we'd call the Good Texan. And so over the years, I've learned from vintage after vintage, which grapes can I get to make a good, solid blend with year after year, no matter what. And red grapes in Texas are a bit more tough to do from year to year than white grapes are. White grapes, obviously, you can pick them earlier.
Right.
You can get ahead of the big heat swings we have in the summertime. You can get ahead maybe of some of the sudden rainstorms we might get, because Texas is mostly still a continental climate. So to get that full ripeness in a red grape, you have to let it hang. You have to get that hang time going. And that means you've got to take lots of risks with, late summer rains, or maybe heat spikes that drive the bricks up, but the ripeness level doesn't quite get there in the fruit. So really the answer to all of that in Texas is to blend.
Right.
And when you think about it, the best wines in the world are blends.
Right.
If you say Bordeaux is the best wine in the world, well, Bordeaux is a blend. Left bank, right bank, they're both blends. So I was determined to make a good Texan blend.
Okay.
One that I could pull off every year, and one that had some great leather and black cherry that you'd get from Tempranillo. Get the king of grapes in there, Cabernet Sauvignon, get that strawberry note from the Cab. Throw a little bit of Cab Franc in there for some elegance.
Okay.
And then back it up with some body, with a 1 or 2% Petit Verdot in the blend. And every year now we're able to make this wine because the percentages of the blend, the different vineyards we're sourcing this from in the High Plains, we can now pull this wine off just about every year.
Nice.
And so when we did this wine, I said, I need a label for it. I've got to create a nice label for this. What am I going to do? And I thought to myself, a Longhorn Cadillac would be a great photograph for something named the Good Texan. And I had trouble, though, finding a Longhorn Cadillac. I did. There's one down at there's Billy Bob's has a Longhorn Cadillac in Fort Worth.
Right.
But the thing is that with you may not know this, but with labeling laws, you can't have things like flags and things like that on your labels. And the Billy Bob's Cadillac has like Texas flags hanging off of it and things like that. And so I got with one of my best friends. His name is Carlos Seckler. He owns Seckler Creative here in Dallas. And he said, you know what, Chris, I can make this label. And so he actually created the label for me of this Longhorn Caddy. And then we took the license plate that's on my pickup truck, which is the Good Texan.
Right.
If you see me driving around town, you now know that's my license plate on my red pickup truck. I don't have a Longhorn Caddy. I wish I did, but I don't.
It's not hard to buy a Cadillac and put Longhorns on it.
It's shocking. You can actually find, this is a 1976 Cadillac Eldorado. It's shocking. You can actually go on the different trade websites and find 76 Cadillac Eldorados. So someday we're going to do that. We're going to grab an Eldorado and put some horns on it.
Make sure it's convertible.
Yes, it has to be.
And it's white.
Yes, just like Boss Hog from Dukes of
exactly where I was going with that one.
Well, I already did my WKRP in Cincinnati joke. So, yes, I also grew up watching Dukes of Hazzard. Yes, Catherine Bach. Yes, everybody remembers Dukes of Hazzard. And Boss Hog with his white Cadillac with the horns, right? So he came up with a label, and it's a huge hit. And that the license plate on the car is my license plate, Good Texan.
Nice.
And it matches the wine name.
Yeah.
And so that's what this wine was meant to symbolize, so that when you come into the tasting room, and I encourage people out there, when you come into a Texas tasting room, don't come in expecting the wines to be bad. Don't walk in and say, well, I wasn't expecting the wines to be good. Instead, walk into a Texas tasting room and say, I'm here to try your great wine. Right. I'm here to try those good Texas wines that I know that you have. That's really important to me. I think the Texas industry as a whole has made a huge shift in the last 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
It's picking up awards in all kinds of international competitions. A lot of the wines now are being given point scores and ratings. I know that James Suckling is rating wines right now in Texas.
Just in the state.
Yep.
And so it's very important for us to say to people, you can now walk into Texas wineries and expect to have good Texan wine.
And I've been doing this podcast now. We're going on 3 years now. And I've been to 84 different wineries now. And I can't say that I've not gone into a winery that I've not had any good wine from a winery. Now I'm going to preface that as well. Well, I can't preface. I'll postface that. But I have tasted wine that when I drank it at that moment, because of what I ate prior did not sit well on my palate. But I went ahead and bought the bottle and then tried it again later, and it was absolutely amazing. Yeah. And working at Landon Winery, I have people that come in and do tastings all the time, and they always say dealer's choice. And so the first thing I ask out of their mouth is, what did you eat before you came here? And they would tell me, well, I ate this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And I'm sitting there thinking, a process in my head, okay, we have this and this and this and this. Which one of these would be great with what they had? Because I want them to have a great tasting experience when they drink. And so you may go into a winery, you may have something that may not sit well on your palate, and it's because you probably ate something that's still residing on your palate that you need to actually kind of get that off your palate and try something else. And I've tried crackers and I've tried water. I've yet to figure out the only way to get things off my palate is to brush it.
Actually, with a toothbrush or something?
Yes, with an actual toothbrush. I found the only way to get something completely off my palate was to brush my teeth. Don't put toothpaste or anything like that. I just get a toothbrush and just kind of like.
I didn't think about that. I've got a lot of free toothbrushes from my dentist. We could put them in the tasting room and we could just brush people's teeth.
Call it a palate cleaner. Don't call it a toothbrush. Call it
instead of a palate cleanser, it's a palate cleaner or something like that.
But I mean, if you think about it, it scrubs the palate a little bit, and it kind of gets anything that's built inside that palate out. And I've done that a couple of times, and I've actually tested that, and it actually works. It actually changed that taste.
Well, sounds like he's got something he really wants to.
I have gotten I just brushed my teeth thing, so give me a couple pours to get it off my palate. I'm like, okay, whatever. There,
wrestling does that too,
Yeah, with people's palates, you hope that by the second wine you pour for them, if you're doing a red tasting with somebody, by the second wine, you would hope to have an idea of what kind of wines they like.
Oh yeah.
And when I pour wine in the tasting rooms, I talk about the structure of the wine. I don't get involved a lot in flavors unless it's like obvious, like our Montepulciano is spicy red cherry. I hit them, this is one of our lighter reds. It's just a great summer red. And you hit them with that and they taste it and they're like, wow, it is. Yeah, it's a nice light red. I can see this with different things. You want to make them think about what they're tasting and not just bury them with flavors and stuff like that and not oversell anything.
Oh yeah.
But the people come in when you have to watch them, how they taste too.
Yes.
And see their eyebrow goes up after they taste something. That's a natural reaction. I like that, and so it's kind of fun interacting with people in tasting rooms to see how they taste wines and what they're looking for out of the wines.
Oh, yeah.
And like Chris was saying, the stigma of Texas wines is still there. And I think a lot of that's due to the retail aspect of Texas wine, which is not very good for a lot of reasons. I'm not going to get into that, but it is a problem. And I think we're going to fight this from a retail standpoint for years until distributors and retailers, there's a handful of retailers around the state.
Right.
Houston Wine Merchant, for instance, he has a nice selection of Texas wines from a lot of Lewis Wines and William Chris and some other smaller wineries out in the Hill Country. He actually has a separate Texas section. It's a very small store. But the big box, it's, half that stuff's not even Texas. And that's the problem with the consumer is how they can recognize and know that they're drinking a Texas wine.
Yeah. And you made a good point about, watching the people's faces during their tasting. That's one of my favorite things to do is sit there and, well, first off, I'll tell them, I said, all right, dealer's choice, close the tasting menu. Don't look at the menu anymore. I'm going to pour you wine because I don't want you to read the winemaker's notes because that's a big influence on how you're tasting. Because I don't want you to pour it and think you're going to be tasting gravel or, blueberries or whatever. I want you to taste what's on your palate, not what's in that book. And so it's fun always to pour that. And I don't even tell them what it is either. I don't even tell them what vintage varietal it is. I don't tell them what kind of blend it is. I don't tell them nothing. I just pour it. I let them taste. And then they look at me and like, oh, I like that. You did a really good job at pairing this with what I ate. And then they say, what did I just drink? And I tell them. And then they'll open the book up after they've done all their tastings and they'll read it and they're like, I never tasted any of this stuff. And I said, anytime you go do a tasting, don't read the book, do dealer's choice. And hopefully the person that's pouring you the wine can do exactly what I just did and give you that experience.
I think those are great points. I think as well that one of the things that can really help Texas wine, I think in the retail world, is getting more news out there about Texas wines. I think, when you go to a restaurant and you're looking at a wine list, if you don't recognize the producers, on the list, you're going to kind of default to either a California or maybe a European wine, just because it's the safe bet.
You can't have empty glass.
In your mind, it's kind of the safe bet.
Sacrilege it is.
So we were thrilled because the Good Texan picked up a double gold at San Francisco Chronicle wine competition. And that was big for us because when you get a double gold in San Francisco Chronicle, they print those double gold wines, and that one. We're making sure we're choosing our right glasses.
Here, hang on, I'll smell it. Yeah, this is my glass.
I can always spot my glass because I drink over the same spot all the time. Usually over the logo, because that's how persnickety I can be sometimes. But
oh man,
it's a good thing that wine is antiseptic, I guess. Right?
Yes, that's right.
Depends on what the alcohol content is.
And that's true. It's true. We're checking right now on the alcohol content.
It's actually pretty low, I think.
Let me get hang
that
on.
vintage was in the 13s. Yeah, 13.
That's the one thing I like. You do not have to have a high alcohol level for the wine to have big flavors. Some of these California cabs, which is where I started in the wine world, basically was California. They'll push 15%, 15.3, 15.4, and that's cool. And they're big and jammy and stuff like that. But you can get that same flavor and profile out of a wine at something that's in the mid 13s. That's what Bordeaux has been doing for hundreds of years, is 13.5, 13.7, 13.8. They're not big powerhouse wines. They're really balanced, which is what I preach to people when they're drinking wine, is balance. That makes a good bottle of wine.
Yes. And that's 100% guarantee right there every time. If you balance your wine, it'll make a great wine every time. And yes, I like a good high alcohol content wine sometimes because I don't want it burn going down. I want to be able to taste it.
Yeah, sometimes you don't want to be left on the floor drinking alcohol wine. Sometimes you want to have a wine that just makes it through the whole meal and you're still feeling, fresh afterwards. So,
I'm going to tell a little story about myself right quick. It's
story time. You love it.
You can't go back.
I know, that's the bad thing about this.
The internet is forever.
There's been a couple instances where me and a few people, we won't say their names, that used to do the podcast. We'll just leave it at that. And we drank almost a half a case of wine one night. And then turned around and got up the next day and was at Hilmy drinking wine out of the barrel at 9:00 in the morning. and honestly, I felt great. I mean, I was fine. I was going inside town and getting coffee and pastries for everybody, and everybody's like,
You were having trouble getting Hilmy to aim into your glass as you were leaning to one side.
I was fine. Everybody else was having problems, But wine is such a great little versatile drink. You can take the same, and this is one thing I love about Texas wines, is that you can take the same grape from the same vine, give it to 6 different people, and you will get magic from each one of them, and it's always going to taste different.
You're right, and I think a lot of the magic in winemaking is in the blend. I think that it's very rare in Texas to have 100% varietal wines that hold their own. I think that you can pull off 100% varietal wines in Texas, but I much prefer the magic of blending. I think another fellow winemaker of mine said to me once, would you paint with one color? And I think that really rings true. So when you come to making wine, I think the real magic is in the blend.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, 100%. And there are some blends out there. And I'm not just going to say Texas blends, but there's blends from all around the world that you just take 2 grapes and you blend them thinking it's something that comes out great, and it doesn't happen properly, and it happens. It's going to happen. You can't make the perfect blend every time, but with a little work, a little studying, understanding chemistry, it eventually get better.
Right.
And with that being said, that's why they started using barrels, right?
Yes, it's true. Yeah. And so the blending is part of that magic. We were at a wine tasting in Napa Valley a few weeks ago, and the tasting room associate was saying, okay, let's try these two cabs side by side, and then we're going to give you the final blended cab. The two cabs were out of two different barrels. And then she gave us the actual final wine that the winemaker made. And she said, let's do an experiment. Let's see if you guys can blend up between these two glasses something similar to what the winemaker came out with at the end. No, we could not. Our blends were terrible. But the winemaker's blend was fantastic, and it really shows the nuance there where you can take, hundreds of barrels and you can sample through them and, any number of different grape varietals and come up with an incredibly well-balanced wine. So to me, that's really the magic of especially red wine making is blending.
Yeah. That's, I have to commend you with the good Texan. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've got a couple of bottles of these at the house. And I refuse to drink them because they're so good. And I know if I drink it all, there's not going to be another bottle.
No.
We know where you can get more.
Yeah. No problem. Right off my shoulder here is the 23 good Texan ready to be bottled.
I've got a straw in the truck back. I fit on that.
I know where the spigot is. We can go right into that.
We are live. We can show do it.
Yeah.
But
if the TBC is watching, don't worry. We'll account for it.
Yes.
So it's okay.
This is a fun wine to pour in the tasting room. Usually it's towards the end of our tasting. Right now it's the fourth, and our reserve red flight is the fourth wine we pour. And it's also cool. Sometimes I'll go off the tasting menu and I will pour the 22 High Plains Tempranillo that we have right before I pour the good Texan. And I will tell them, so the same Tempranillo you just had here is now in this bottle, just blended with some other grapes so you can see what it does when you blend. And people love being able to manipulate that kind of thing. It's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I always go off the reservation sometimes when I'm doing a tasting for people based on how they're reacting to the wines. And let's try a little bit of this. I always give them something off the menu and say, here's something that, like the good Texan is a blend, and then here's the Divine Red, which is another Tempranillo blend, to see how it affects the different wines with what's blended into it. That's what's fun.
So I know we haven't opened it yet, but let's go ahead and just talk about it. And I know we still got glasses full, so don't. It's not tequila shots.
But it could be.
No. I'm just going to leave it at that. No. Trust me, I had my tequila shots for New Year's Eve. We're not doing those again.
Yeah.
Oh, New Year's Eve, yeah.
So tell us about your cab here that you got.
So we're Cabernet Sauvignon. So cab in Texas is definitely, it's a journey. Cab has to have a long hang time to get to those really ripe cassis flavors and notes, that dark strawberry. And so we've searched for a long time in Texas to find a vineyard that we could work with that can consistently hang that Cabernet Sauvignon the way that we need it. And that vineyard is David Dill's a family vineyard out in Brownfield. And he does a fantastic job with his cab. He's an extremely good farmer. He farms more than wine grapes, but his vineyard there that he has in Brownfield is very well tended. So that really made a big difference for us because obviously the quality of wine is based on the vineyard itself. We can do a lot on the winery, but if you don't have great grapes to start with, it's just trouble in the winery. So David Dill's fruit, his family vineyard's fruit is fantastic, great fruit. So this Cabernet Sauvignon is 98% Cabernet Sauvignon and 2% Petit Verdot. Like Bill said, I love a touch of Petit Verdot in our wines at Eden Hill. I think the Petit Verdot is one of the great red grapes of Texas. It does not have that green unripeness that it would get from its native Europe.
Right.
In Texas, the heat, that high heat that we get just turns Petit Verdot into like caviar in the vineyard. It's dark, it's rich, very jammy. And so it just gives this nice kind of cradle or almost like a foundation to any wine you put it into.
That's all Clonate Cabernet too.
Oh, Clonate.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
That's what he grows in there, which is...
Clonate's similar to what the clone would be like in Chapelet's vineyard up in Pritchard Hill.
Yeah.
They've got some Clonate up there.
So for our listeners who don't know what Clonate is, kind of give her a quick 10-minute spill on that.
Sure, yeah. So clones, your listeners may not know this, but all grapevines are clones of each other. So Cabernet Sauvignon was a chance cross between Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc in a vineyard in France many years ago. And once you find a grape that you like to work with, how do you make a vineyard? Well, you take that grape, you take the seeds, and you bring up a new vineyard based on those seeds. And then from then on, you can actually take that vine and you can take cuttings from that vine and you could plant those prunings in another location. First, you go to the roots, then you plant the new vine. So essentially, Cabernet Sauvignon is kind of a clone of itself. All grapevines are like that. Even the Tempranillo that we have sitting out in our vineyard here at Eden Hill is a clone of Tempranillo from Spain. Over time, though, some of those clones just develop certain qualities. Mm-hmm. Some might have more tannin, some might have more fruit, some might have more rustic kind of characters to them. Some have thicker skins. The color might be slightly different. There's just a lot of very small nuances between the clones. And so Clone 8 was a clone that was largely planted in California. It has maybe a little more, I'm not going to say vegetable, I'm going to say it's got a bit more of an herbaceous aroma to it. And so like if you drink like Chapelet from Napa up on Pritchard Hill, you can really detect that kind of Clone 8 in their wine. It has almost like this little bit of eucalyptus, I would say, in the wine.
Interesting.
So when I say vegetal or herbaceous, that's not in a bad way. It's actually a very interesting way. That eucalyptus smell or that kind of graphite eucalyptus aroma is unique to that clone. Right. And so when David Dill planted his vineyard in Brownfield, we said, you've got Clone 8. That's going to make a really interesting Texas Cabernet because of that little hint of eucalyptus in the aroma to go with that big strawberry jammy fruit that it's also going to have. So a winemaker sometimes is going to look for which clones were planted in which vineyard. And in that way, you can kind of almost choose some style notes in your wines before you even make them. Right. You can say, I want this Clone 8, this vineyard has Clone 7, and so on. And you can actually then even blend those clones together back in the winery once you ferment them. That's
fun and interesting. Honestly, being still very young in my winemaking and understanding vineyards and stuff, I'm not going to lie, I didn't understand the full what Clone 8 was until you just explained it to me. And that's what I love about doing this podcast is I want to help educate people because they don't know. And when they learn, they understand it more and they're like, okay, now I understand the mindset of why you made this wine.
Yeah, I've had some customers even say to me, is cloning, is that like GMO? Is that like genetically modified? No, it's not. It sounds like it was done in a Star Wars lab, where they clone stormtroopers or something.
This is where people, I don't know that people really understand Texas Cab, what their expectations are. Everybody has Napa in their head. That's where Cabernet in America has been just, Cab
Merlot and Pinot Noir.
But Texas Cabs aren't Napa Valley.
Correct.
They're very red fruit dominated, which is something that what I've seen. I mean, I've had a lot of Texas Cabs from different wineries and they're good. Some of them are great, but you don't get that heavy black fruit. They're going to be that brighter red fruits, like Chris said, the strawberry and that red currant. Right. Understanding the stuff is half the battle to get people to, when they taste that wine and after you describe it to them in the tasting room, people will love it. Yep. But that's not your atypical Cabernet from a Napa standpoint because of all that red fruit and that little, like I said, that eucalyptus and that little herbaceousness, those pyrazine notes that come out. They soften as the wine opens up and that wine probably ages, 12, 15 years. Right. Which is another thing about Texas wines, maybe for another story, but Texas wines will age. If the producer is good, I regularly drink my stuff 8 to 12 years.
And, honestly, talking about aging Texas wines, we know that Texas wines 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago didn't age very well. A lot of people said that Texas wines did not age very well. Now they're starting to age very well. And I'm not going to lie. I actually opened up a bottle of Bob Landon's Texan that was 14 years old. And let me tell you something. That was probably, in fact, it was actually kind of comical. So we opened it up. Anytime I open wine at my house, it's always with friends. It's never by myself. And I opened it up. There's 5 of us sitting there, and I pour everybody a glass of it. We finished the bottle off, and we sat right there, and I got to take the first drink, and I sipped it. And when I did that, I turned and looked at everybody, and I said, y'all need to put it back in the bottle. And they said, why? Is it bad? I said, yes. It's so bad that I can't share it with y'all. And then I continued drinking that glass. Let me tell you something. That was probably the most amazing bottle of wine I drank that was that old. I've never drank anything that old ever in wine since I started doing this whole wine stuff. And that was an amazing bottle. That was 14 years old.
Aged Texas wines are a rare thing. So what happens in Texas is because most wineries are very small, there's a demand for your product. And 2 years after bottling, you've got it out into the tasting room and it completely disappears. Right. Yeah. So, and we know that most people, when they buy a bottle of wine, probably 98% of them drink the bottle of wine that night. Mm-hmm. Very few people actually hold those bottles back to age them.
I've still got early stuff from Pedernales and Inwood and stuff in my cellar just sitting there. 13, 14-year-old temp preserve from Pedernales is still bright and drinking really well.
So when we have a dinner, I'll make dinner if you open a bottle.
We can do that. These things can be arranged.
Some of that handmade pasta.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to throw this out there. So I got some friends of mine who are Hispanic, and I made some carne guisada, so Mexican beef stew. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I took a chuck roast, quartered it, put it in a big pan, put some olive oil on it, threw a bunch of garlic on it, thinly sliced jalapeno, put it on top of it, and seasoned it with some meat church seasoning on it. And then I put it in the smoker for like 2 hours. Okay. Toward the end of that 2 hours, I went inside and started cutting up all the vegetables and made the roux in my cast iron. And then I went out there and cranked that heat up just a little bit more to get the meat to be a little bit of pink in the middle. Got it done, came inside, had everything done, stuck the meat inside there, and then mixed it with the roux, made the gravy and stuff, and then let it slow cook for like the next 3 hours. And then I turned around and opened up, what did I open up? I opened up a bottle of Tempranillo from Hilmy. And then I opened up a Montepulciano from our friends over here at Square Cloud. And let me tell you something. I've never seen somebody eat so many tacos in my life. He literally said, that tastes just like what my grandmother used to make in Mexico. And I
that's a big compliment.
That's a big compliment. Now, he was also 4 bottles in too, so. But we can definitely cook and make some stuff happen.
Oh, yeah. I think maybe a little podcast down the road where we do some vintage, older vintage Texas wine tasting type things. And
I'm okay with that.
Because we have some nice library wines in our.
I can do that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun to do.
We could arrange that. We can make it happen.
There'd be a lot of surprises, I think.
It would be.
Yeah. So a lot of good things coming from Eden Hill. Lots and lots of good things. And congratulations on your bottles of wine that you got here.
Well, thank you.
I've always loved what you got. In fact, actually, I just finished my Rosé Tempranillo that I got from you last year, or actually 2 years ago, 2023.
That's a rare bottle
and I really didn't want to open it. But I really wanted a Rosé Tempranillo, and that was the only one in my collection. So I refrigerated it and opened it the next day, and then I regretted it really bad the next day. So it is what it is.
That's true. Look, for the last couple of years, we were experimenting with our Tempranillo Rosé, and it's worked out beautifully. You don't see a lot of Tempranillo Rosés, especially like in the grocery stores. You maybe see like a Pinot Noir Rosé or maybe an Italian Rosé.
Yep.
But the Tempranillo in Texas is beautiful for rosé making.
And yours was a rose gold red. And every time I looked at it, it's like, that reminds me of rose gold.
Yes. And that's because Tempranillo has a lot of good color in the skins. So even though we whole cluster press our Tempranillo Rosé, it still picks up a fair amount of color from those skins, even just from that light pressing that we do. But that Tempranillo Rosé, that's really important to us. We've really come to love it. Our vineyard here, we're in the middle, sadly, of replanting it. So we're actually tearing the vines out this season. And then this year, we're going to be completely redoing the trellising. We're going to be deep ripping the soil. We're going to be redoing the irrigation. And then in 2026, we're going to replant to Tempranillo so that we can really dedicate that vineyard to Tempranillo Rosé. And we have to do that because the vineyard is close to 20 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And 20 years ago, we only had the knowledge of what we had then,
right,
in terms of which rootstock to put the Tempranillo onto, how to treat the soil, things like that. And so we have 20 years new knowledge that we now know much better about how to grow Tempranillo up here in North Texas. And so that vineyard has reached the end of its lifespan here. Right. And so in 2026, it's going to be a whole new vineyard.
So we made no rosé this year, sadly, but next year we have a Tempranillo Rosé coming back, thanks to Mr. Oswald.
Oh,
correct. He's got
actually, I think David Dill. Actually,
David Dill.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna try to do a Tempranillo Rosé from David Dill's vineyard.
I was waiting for that. Looked like you shouldn't be saying that.
You can edit that out. So. But yeah,
we'll leave that. No.
Yeah, but yeah. So that was a big thing, being able to come back with a Tempranillo Rosé, because to find somebody that'll harvest it early, is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
you don't want a good.
You've got to pick it at just the right time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I want to try to do eventually is do the rosé. I think for me personally, in my personal opinion, you got to perfect a red, because if you can perfect a red, you can perfect a white and a rosé. And so my goal right now is to perfect my red making, which I have Alicante Boucher right now.
That's right.
From Ready Vineyards, thanks to Anthony. And then I believe he told me that there's a spot in their vineyard. If you ever looked at the Google map, they've got a small patch of vineyard. It's just Mod Podge of vines. They don't know what they are. And I think he told me that some of those were Cab Sauv, Cab Franc, and Petit Verdot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, our Petit Verdot comes from Ready Vineyard.
Okay. So I've got a small little blend that I'm doing right now of that as well.
Oh, okay.
And so they're going through Mallow right now. And so I'm hoping my Mallow test will come in and tell me where they're at, and then I'll start fixing them up. And I haven't decided if I'm going to leave them. So I actually just purchased some 100-liter tanks. So I'm trying to decide if I want to leave them in the carboys, or if I'm going to pump them over and put them into the stainless steel tanks and let them sit there and do clean stainless steel, non-oaked Alicante and this fill blend. Or if I want to take some of it and do oak on it and then not the rest of it.
Well, we're happy to do some bench trials with you if you want to bring them in. Yeah.
I know you would.
Yeah. There may not be a lot of trialing, but there'll be a lot of drinking, I think.
Well, I will say this, and I'm going to give Christy and Andrew from Loans and Vine a big shout out. They have been a really big help also in my winemaking experience this last year, the last couple of months. And also KK Hartman, I want to give her a big shout out because she gave me my Tempranillo that I just bottled for Christmas Day, which should be ready here in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, Chris McIntosh, and then Grayson over at RK, Grayson Davies, and then, of course, you, Chris.
It's okay. You can put me at the end. It's cool.
But you actually gave me more of the want to do more of the what is it, the Euphora tanks?
Oh, the Amphora, clay.
The clay ones. You gave me one to do with that. So I've actually got somebody actually making me some of those right now.
Really? You're going to, some custom built Amphora.
Yes.
I think you're really going to like that.
I want to do that because, that's where wine was originally made from.
Yes.
Now, actually, I don't know if you actually saw this article online, but they found a place in China up in the mountains that they cut a hole out in the ground, in the rock, and actually they found remnants of wine inside that hole.
So they were actually just fermenting in this hole.
In the mountain.
I guess. In the mountain.
Yeah, in the mountain. And I'm like, interesting.
We can't really try that here in Texas. There's not many mountains to do that with. But
we can go to Possum Kingdom.
Yes, you could.
Let me see your dress. We're going to pour you a little of what we call the Black Label Cab.
Black Label Cab.
Well, there were some names you mentioned there. The Reddies. That's VJ and Akil Reddy. Yep. They own Reddy Vineyards. For those of you from the audience are wondering, and then Anthony is Anthony Mosley. He's the winemaker for Reddy. Anthony is one of the probably one of the most experienced winemakers in Texas. He's been all over making wine in the state.
I love Anthony. Anthony is such a great winemaker,
He is. He's fantastic.
He
And
cracks
an
me up.
easygoing personality.
He does. But what cracks me up is when I get him on the podcast. It's like this. I can barely hear what
He's very soft-spoken. That's true.
And so every time I talk to him, I'm like, hey, Anthony, can you get close to the microphone? Oh, yeah, I can get to it. And then he gets to it, and then he'll start talking real softly again. And then I have to turn him up some more. I get to a point where I can't turn up anymore because I'm going to start giving feedback. You know?
Most winemakers like to kind of hang back in the barrels and stay in the cellar. They're not really,
But,
the camera types,
Oh, yeah. But, Anthony is a great guy. I mean, he's also,
Yes.
he gave me my Alicante Boucher. He gave me my fill blend that I'm doing. And so I thank him for that as well. Because, I mean, again, the one thing that Rusty from Breaking Bud made a comment about, he said the Texas wine industry is a competition environment. We co-op with each other, help with whatever problem they're having, but we're also in competition. Because, you can have two of the same grapes off the same vine and get two totally different wines.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
From just one day to the next, the vines can take on a completely different chemistry.
Man, what a kickoff to season 3 of We Know Texas Vino. This is the first part of the show, and just wait for the second part. You can catch this episode in its entirety on YouTube later this week, and then part 2 will be released next week. Also, do not forget that January the 25th at 1 p.m. at 555 Winery in Valley View, Texas, this is our season 3 kickoff party. Come have a glass of wine with us and ask us questions. You never know who's just going to pop in. And this year is going to be a great year. We're going to kick it up another notch, so be on the lookout for things to come. Till then, listeners, cheers.